Hey guys, welcome back to the video. This is always one that's a reoccurring theme because I continuously get questions. But before we get into the difference in TRT and steroids, I need you to hit, if you would like so, I'd like you to hit the subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, hit the notification bell. Apparently only 11% of you are getting notified when we launch videos. So if you like these videos and you want me to continue to produce them and share information, which I like to do, Brandon loves editing these wonderful videos, hit that notification bell so YouTube tells you when we posted a new video. All right, let's get into it. I want to address something that is preventing a lot of men from getting the care they need. When most people hear the word testosterone, they're thinking steroids. And that it's not the case. They think it's like, oh, you're cheating. I get that all the time. My Instagram is flooded with cheating comments. But nonetheless, they think the guy at the gym who is unnaturally large and has anger issues, that's the first thing they think they go to it. Listen, I'm 6 foot. I'm 213 pounds. I'm about 10 to 11% body fat, depending on the pizza I had the night before. And that's where I sit. And I'm 44 years old and my testosterone levels are normal. I'm not the big guy at the gym, even though I'm not a small man either. But because of that association, there are men right now, that veterans specifically, who are walking around with testosterone levels that are clinically and medically dangerous, and they will not go get treated because they don't want to be that guy or they don't want to feel like they're cheating. Let me separate these two things completely because they're not the same thing. They've never been the same thing, and conflating them is costing men's health, it can cost their marriages, and unfortunately, in the cases that we know of, it can cost men's lives. So what is the actual reality? Well, testosterone replacement therapy is exactly what that name says. It's replacing what the body is not already producing at healthy levels. So the goal is not super physiological levels. The goal is optimal physiological levels. I'm gonna say that again. Goal is not super physiological levels. We're not creating mutants. The goal is just optimizing your physiological levels of where you're supposed to be. So what does that mean? What does optimal look like? Ranges that support health, cognitive function, energy, mood, regulation, libido, muscle maintenance, and metabolic health. So for most people, for most men, this is somewhere between 700 and 1,000 of total T. And for context, a healthy 25-year-old, I'm gonna say this, a healthy, normal 25-year-old that gets sun and gets exercise and eats right typically sits in that range. So he typically right around 700 to 1,000 naturally at that age, and that's just the way that it goes. So who needs TRT? Why would you get on TRT? Well, obviously, if you watched any of my videos, you know that there's two types of hypergonadism, type 1 and type 2. One is damage to the testes themselves. You've had like my business partner who had what's called a brownout. I'll let you Google that. Maybe turn on an incognito browser before you do it. Brandon's over here laughing. Essentially what a brownout is, and I didn't know this until I met him, was when your sac opens up and your nut falls out of your sac. And apparently it can go very, very far. And the feeling in your gut is quite excruciating. Can't imagine what that is. There's probably men watching this video right now going, oh God. But that's type 1 hypergonadism, actual trauma to the testes themselves. Type 2 is damage to your brain, which is your pituitary gland, which is going to interrupt the endocrine system and the signals that it goes from your brain to your testes to produce testosterone. That's type 1 and type 2 hypergonadism. So those people, listen, there's no amount of eating right, butthole, suntanning, or whatever weird ashwagandha bullshit that you're going to do that's going to fix that, right? You've actually had physical trauma to the system that's going to cause, it's going to interrupt your endocrine system and cause you to have low T. So all of you gurus out there talking about like you just need to get sun on your butthole and eat good vegetables and go carnivore and all this kind of stuff, that's not going to help. Well, it will help. It's just not going to put you in optimal range. So anyways, so who needs this, right? It's type 1, type 2 hypergonadism people. It's men whose testosterone has declined to levels that produce fatigue, brain fog, depression, low libido, irritability, loss of muscle mass, and increased body fat. And again, this is a part of the aging process. So as over 31 years old, your testosterone is on a decline. It's just the way that it is. And if you start feeling those symptoms, you need to get a blood test. So what is the threshold number? Like, well, my doctor says like, well, I'm in range. Well, in range based off, says who based off what? The threshold, it's not just a number. It's a number in the context of symptoms. So a man at 400 with no symptoms is different than a man with 400 that can barely function. Like, this is a big deal, right? So the fact that people will check one number, your total test, and then base the entire thing off of that and not look at your sex hormone binding globulin, not look at your LH and FSH, not look at your estradiol, not look at your free test, like that's a problem. And they're also not looking at your symptoms. So if you're not looking at your symptoms, well, then this whole range is garbage. Specifically, like when I talk to a lot of the veteran community or first responders, they'll go to their thing and they're like, oh, well, you're 301. You're a 301 at 31 years old. You're in range. You're fine. Dude, that's a 75-year-old man. What are we talking about? I'm 31 years old. I should be closer to the 700 range. Especially if I'm a 301 with a ton of symptoms. That's a big problem. Again, first responders, people that live that life, veterans, disproportionately affected because of what the service to the endocrine system does over the years, the chronic stress, sleep deprivation, TBI, sustained inflammation, etc. That you can link in one of these videos, this video, wherever I'm pointing at. I'm not sure where it is, but I did a video talking about what combat does to the endocrine system and testosterone. So go check that out and then come back over here. When you're not doing bro science, you're not getting it from black market stuff, you're not getting it from the guy in the naked guy in the locker room at your gym. What does proper TRT look like in real life? Okay, well, out the gate, before we do anything, we're doing a 28-panel blood test on your body. This is not a CBC metabolic panel. This is a very in-depth blood panel that will catch everything. We're talking total test, free test, estradiol, everything I talked about. Sex hormone binding globulin, LH, FSH, Hemocrat, your PSA, and much, much more. If you go and Google Nick Koumalatsos, matter of fact, I'll just put the link in the description, but if you Google Nick Koumalatsos TRT labs, you'll come up with a link and it breaks down the entire blood protocol that we do, and that would be and explains exactly which one is. So very educational for you if you want to look that up. Again, link is in the description. But then the next step is, once we get that blood test, now we're going with the physician. He's looking over, talking about your symptoms, your lifestyle, the things that you're frustrated about, and then determining a protocol, your dosage, delivery method, frequency that's going to benefit you and your symptoms. Plus, this is where a lot of GPs and the VA get it wrong, is because they might give testosterone, but they're not giving any complementary medications for aromatase inhibitors, for estrogen, and there's a lot of hate out there, like, you don't need to block estrogen. Well, say that to somebody over 40 and their estrogen spikes through the roof and they're starting to have prostate issues. That's going to be a problem. So yes, you need to, if we're going to optimize our testosterone, we're going to optimize our estrogen. Then we're not going to crush it. We're not going to make it go away, because we need it. Our joints, our libido, all function off estrogen. Estrogen's not women and testosterone's not men. Get out of that thought. Testosterone's for women, estrogen's for women. Testosterone's for men, estrogen's for men. Like, we have to be optimal. It's about taking every single hormone and putting them in the optimal range. So I want to be really clear about that. Whether it's HCG for fertility protocol or fertility priority, because a lot of people say, like, well, if I get on TRT, then I can't have a kid. That's not necessarily true. There's fertility protocols, and you can maintain your fertility through complementary medications while you're on TRT. Be careful the source of where you're getting information. There's, at Core, we have tons of patients that are having kids. I mean, hell, look at Vince Vargas. I think he's up to like 18 kids now at this time. And then outside of that, now you're regulating your blood work. Most men don't get blood work but once every several years, and that's a CBC metabolic panel. And now we're talking about getting this blood panel every 90 days to 6 months at a minimum once a year to see how it's going. I'm a little freak. I like to get my blood panel done at least every 3 months, every 90 days, so that I can kind of see what's going on under the hood. Can I tweak things? Can I make things better? So again, this is medicine. It's managed, it's monitored, and it's adjusted as need be. Okay. Anabolic steroids. Trenbolone sandwiches. So first of all, I did a great podcast with Mel Chansey, a good friend of mine, and just an amazing human being, an amazing man. I suggest you follow him on Instagram. He does a daily prayer every morning for people and goes live and etc. But if you're needing that, he's your dude, and everybody needs that. Nonetheless, we were talking about the black market testosterone, because he was, in his former life, he was an HA guy, and he did a couple things and did the time for it. He was talking about in the early days in the 70s and the stuff, and with anabolic steroids was very similar. The lab would produce testosterone cypionate, and out one door would go to the pharmacy, and out the other door would go into a truck, and that's where you get it from the gym guys. But now everything is coming from China. All this stuff is coming from China. So a lot of the black market labs that are producing testosterone, they say they're producing testosterone cypionate, is the same places that are producing fentanyl. And so you got to be very careful when you're getting black market drugs. Matter of fact, just don't do it. But if you are doing it, like, know that you are playing Russian roulette with your body and your life. Things are not what they used to be. Like I said, they're producing them in the same lab as fentanyl. I'm not saying that it has fentanyl in it. It's not what I'm saying. But the chances, it's just not worth it to me at my age. I want to do it right. I want to feel good. I want to optimize. And then outside of that, we did a batch. One of the labs that we used tested a batch of black market testosterone cypionate, and almost all of it came back for partial use or mixed with trenbolone. So trend. And so you don't know what you're getting. And if you really want to mess up your life and mess up your system, unfortunately, we get a lot of the guys that go on black market testosterone or go on anabolic steroids, and they end up messing their endocrine system up really bad, and they come to us to get fixed. Nonetheless. So again, anabolic steroids in a performance context are synthetic derivatives of testosterone used to push the body beyond its natural hormonal ceiling. So the goal there is super physiological levels. And then they utilize testosterone, yes, but they also use other androgens and horse shit and all kinds of things that have concentrations that the body would never produce on its own. If I test your blood, guess what I'm going to get? Testosterone. Okay. So that being said, you're adding things that are unnatural to your body. Also, doses are typically 5 to 20 times the amount of TRT. All right. It's often stacked with multiple compounds, like we were talking about, that simultaneously produce specific effects on muscle growth, strength, and body composition. This is not what we're doing. If you're wanting that, do not call us. That is not our job. And the performance context for this is bodybuilding, powerlifting, certain combat sports, and then men trying to build above their natural genetic ceiling. And the intent is enhancement, not restoration. And that is a fundamental difference that you guys need to understand. And then when you actually this is where TRT gets a bad rap, because when you are taking anabolic steroids and abusing them at this level, there is a severe cardiovascular stress at super physiological levels. Specifically the left ventricle hypertrophy, altered lipid profiles, and increased clotting risk. Your endocrine suppression, exogenous, testosterone at those levels. What I mean by that is when your testosterone goes so high, it aromatizes into estrogen, so you start having a lot of negative side effects when it comes to that because you're taking so much. And this is the reason why your body shuts down its own production. And this is why TRT gets a bad rap, because, it's going to shut down your natural production. Not necessarily, because we're utilizing complementing medications and we're not taking it to the dose of what that is. Plus, we're not adding all the other anabolic steroids. So this is why you start hearing cycles. There's no cycle with TRT. This is an ongoing thing that just keeps you where you need to be for a long period of time, and it's managed. Most bodybuilders go up and down, and they do post-cycle therapy to restore their natural testosterone so they don't get messed up, or their natural hormone levels, not necessarily testosterone. And then there's also psychological effects as well, and this is the reason why you see the guy that's really big, that's always angry. This is a mood disruption associated with steroids is real, and it is dose dependent. But nonetheless, these risks are not present in properly managed TRT at physiological doses. The dose makes the poison, and plus adding all of the other stuff to it. So here's the cost of this misconception, is because there are guys that really, really need this, right? I know for a fact in my own life, I've said this on this box so many times. When I got out, I was in 91. I almost unalived myself because I was so depressed, when the reality, and people were thinking, PTSD and TBI and all these things. And I had a smidge of both those things, but that really wasn't the problem. The problem was, and I had a friend of mine say, "Hey man, I really think that you should get your hormones checked." I'm not trying to, he wasn't a vet. So he was older than me, and he was on TRT, and he's like, "I just really think if you get a blood test, I think you could benefit from TRT." And I was like, "I'm not pussy. You know what I'm saying? What are you talking about? But when I checked it, it was really low, and no wonder I was depressed. So it was 91, and when I got on TRT, it was within that first week. I just remember like the fog lifted out of my brain. I was like, oh my God, I feel so much better. And the problem with this is you have somebody that is managing depression with medication when the root issue is hormonal. The VA is prescribing antidepressants, but nobody's checking testosterone. So nonetheless, what does a guy do? And this is probably not the VA only. It's probably just going to your GP and you're like, I feel like this. And you're like, you probably could benefit from an antidepressant. So what do? You take antidepressants for years. They help somewhat, but you're still not right. And you're just chasing symptoms. And you won't explore TRT because he doesn't want to be the guy on steroids, and his wife's like, I don't want you roiding out in the house or whatever. Meanwhile, the actual problem is sitting in the blood panel that nobody freaking ordered, right? And so what's the cost of this? What's the relationship cost of this? And we see this time and time again, and we've saved so many marriages because of this. And hell, it saved my own. It saved my own. So low testosterone manifests in these ways. It makes you irritable. It makes you emotionally unavailable. It makes you have low libido. And listen, your dick can still work, okay? You can still get a hard on, but the act of it, the desire for sex won't be there. Like you're just like, meh, I don't really care. All right, that's a problem. This individual, like his wife, is experiencing this as him not caring, right? Like this is how they're receiving this is like, well, you don't even care about me. And it's not that, like you're not present, you're not attracted to her, and all of this is not the case. It's just that your hormones are so low, and you're just like, I can take it or leave it. And obviously that's gonna create some strife in the marriage, and that's a real tragedy. And so then there's a performance cost, right? So the guy who built an identity around physical performance or watching your capacity erode in a very short amount of time. Like I said, I went from 240 at 10% to 240 at 30%. And I'm like, and within a couple years, I'm like, what the heck has happened to me? And of course, that's compounds the depression, compounds the frustration. And so what do? I try to train harder, which I did. And then I get less in return. And eventually I just didn't train as much. And then the whole thing snowballs out of control again. You guys know my story. I sit on this soapbox and I beat the drum. But this is why Core Medical has done so well and has continued to do so well in changing lives in the first responder veteran community and men's health in general. In my own world is saved my life. And the reason why that I talk about it so much, because if I can just get you to do a blood test, I know I can help your life. If you're qualified, and maybe not, maybe you do, maybe you're young and you just need to lose some weight and eat some healthy food and go train. But let's get the blood test and test. Maybe there's something else going on. Problem is, again, if you go to your GP, they're not educated on the system. If you go to the VA, they're not educated. You're not going to get the answers that you want. This is the reason why Core is got the patient pool that we do. It's the reason why that we got the conversation with the people on Capitol Hill, because they know what they're doing. So again, physician-led, protocol-focused care is what matters. There's a gap there, and that's why Core Medical is built the way that it's built. Okay. So again, the difference in the VA, right? The difference in the VA is they're not going to be giving you SSRIs and pain pills and opiates and all this kind of stuff that just kind of mask symptoms. It's going to compound the problem later. So this is blood work. This is protocol depth, monitoring frequency, complementary medications, and talking to your patient coordinators and your physicians over that time. Listen, I'm not necessarily, poking the VA because I want to work with the VA. I'm not poking the VA to poke them as an institution, if you will, because I think that the people that run things genuinely care. It's just the fact is they don't have the education and the know-how and the resources to actually help the right way. And that's the reason why Core is trying to step in to fill that gap, because we know the life changes that we can make. So it's just a factual comparison of the two different approaches to a same problem. So at the end of the day, guys, here's the bottom line. TRT is not steroids. TRT is medicine. It's replacing what the body is not producing at levels that allow you to function the way that you're supposed to function. So it doesn't matter if you're a veteran or somebody who spent years at high stress, high demand, in a high demand environment, and you're experiencing fatigue that sleep does not fix, irritability that you cannot explain, all right? A drive that used to define you that's just not there anymore, and those symptoms are not getting better. Those symptoms that you have, there are causes that behind them, okay? Those symptoms have causes, and there are treatment for them, okay? So at the end of the day, get your blood panel. You're not committing to TRT. You're not committing to a life of TRT. You're not committing to anything other than getting a blood panel done so you can get educated. Know your numbers, all right? And then make it educated decision based off that blood panel and the conversation with the doctor. Then you can make the decision on what you want to do. But don't let the stigma that testosterone is steroids apply to you, all right, or prevent you from getting the care that you actually, that could change your life. So if you want to do that, all right, at the end of the day, if you want to do that with a physician-led clinic that understands what you've been through, all right, and helps you build the protocol that optimizes you rather than minimum intervention. I'm going to say that again. A protocol that optimizes you rather than minimum intervention. So Core Medical, that link is in the description. And if you're a veteran who wants to be part of the change with the VA offers, the survey link is in there as well. And so at the end of the day, guys, know your numbers, take care of yourself, be your own advocate. You earned it. I'll see you in the next video.